Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Soul Seekers podcast, where we believe that hunting has the power to transform lives through primal adventure, as we share our mission of mentorship is conservation. To learn more about everything we do, check out our show on Carbontv or go to soulseekersnation.com. Freedom on, everybody, and stay soulful. This podcast is proud to be brought to you by the Crazy Elk Company. Go to crazyoutcompany.com to pick up yourself a tag wallet, custom kill kit, or one of their e-tag systems to throw in your pack this coming hunting season. Use the code SOULFUL with a capital S to save 20% at checkout. This podcast is also proudly brought to you by OnX Hunt. When I first got into hunting, I kept hearing all about public land and different access and how to find different locations to hunt. I was like, well, how are people even identifying all this stuff? Well, sure enough, I came across the number one hunting GPS app, and that is OnX Hunt. If you guys want to get better at hunting and go deeper into your scouting, OnX Hunt is the number one GPS app for that. Join the millions of hunters who trust OnX Hunt to find more game, discover new access, and hunt smarter. It was a game changer for me, and I know it's going to be a game changer for you if you've never used it. If you have used it, you know the power that it holds. Guys, I really hope you enjoy this episode. If you want to know more about OnX, go to onxmaps.com/hunt and check out their app. Be blessed, freedom on, and stay soulful. All right, guys, before we get into this episode, I just want to give you a little heads up about we are approaching December 10th. In 2 weeks, we're going to be up in the state of Washington and hosting another community event all about bringing people together, building community, sharing the mission of mentorship is conservation, but this time under the banner of conveying the truth about hunting. As you all know, in the state of Washington, it is constantly being attacked as we just lost our spring bear season once again, and it looks like they are going to be attacking hunting animals during the rut, because that is one of the big issues. The anti-hunters' big issues is that it's unfair to hunt animals during the rut. Well, if you are familiar with hunting, when do we hunt elk in September? When do we hunt mule deer in November? When do we hunt all these animals? It's always during the rut, because it does provide the best opportunity for us. And so we're going to be conveying the truth about hunting, and it's time to stand firm and tall and proud for what you love and what you believe in. Today's episode is an awesome episode with a very powerful and inspiring human being. His name's Greg Anderson. He's the host of the Endless Endeavor podcast. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu and just a phenomenal human being. The thing is, we had quite a few technical difficulties with audio during this recording. We started off with a Google Meet conference call, ended up switching to a phone call. We had a cord unplugged. We had my kids in the background making noise, all sorts of stuff. The reason why I'm telling you this is because I don't want you to look at this podcast and be like, oh man, this is a horrible podcast. Wrong. This podcast is powerful, and it's going to challenge you on a lot of things. However, there are some audio dropouts, and I do apologize for that, and I'm doing my best to make sure it is dialed in and ready to rock. With that being said, I hope you guys enjoy this episode, and let me know what you think. I'd love to hear from y'all. Be blessed, everybody. Stay soulful. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Soul Seekers podcast. I'm your host, Johnny Mack, and today I am joined by a warrior of a man who I met in a local pet shop a little over a year ago, who we recorded an epic episode that I released, about a year ago, back during the weird times of 2021 and all that. He's also a black belt in jiu-jitsu and the owner of the Electric North Jiu-Jitsu gym that my kids went to and trained at. He's a good friend, a patriot, a warrior, and he's the host of the Endless Endeavor podcast. Greg Anderson, my man, what's happening, brother?
I'm excited for this episode, bro.
Oh, yeah. It's always a great time. Always a great time. So for those of you who did not catch Greg's episode about a year ago, him and we ran into each other at a pet store in Snohomish, Washington. And I was like, hey, you're Greg Anderson. We have a mutual buddy in our friend Chad. And I was like, Let's talk. Let's get you on the podcast. Let's chat it up, become friends. My kids ended up going to his jiu-jitsu gym, and I even had a session with them as well, and it was epic. So, Greg, tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, your history, and what got you to being a podcast host, and then eventually leading to you getting into this hunting journey. And we're going to talk all about that here as well.
Yeah, of course, man. So yeah, I grew up right here in Snohomish, Washington. I'm actually in Lake Stevens now. And so just normal upbringing here in the farmlands of Snohomish. And when I graduated high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do with life. And I knew I didn't like school. So the next step is probably looking at the military. And I don't know what made me do this, but I was like, if I'm going to go in the military, let's do one of the hardest things they have to offer. And I ended up signing up and going into the 75th Ranger Regiment. And the crazy thing is, this was pre 9/11. 9/11 happened while I was part of the Ranger Regiment. And after that, the op tempo and deployments and just life became crazy. Peacetime military and wartime military are two very, very different things. And it was interesting being able to experience both of those. I ended up doing about 10 years in different agencies that are different teams where I was deploying overseas and doing things in Iraq and Afghanistan. And then I got married, had a family, and like most wives, they don't want their husband in Iraq and Afghanistan while they're raising babies. And I started looking at different options back stateside. Looked into law enforcement, did that for another 10 years. And then, as you know, the story goes, when COVID hit, as a police officer in Seattle, some of the things that were happening, they just weren't making sense. They weren't sitting well with me. And not just me, every single police officer I knew didn't like the direction that the profession was going and what we were being asked to do. So I took a public stand against it. I made a video saying that this isn't police officers' duties. We shouldn't be treating citizens like this. And it went super, super fucking viral. Hundreds of millions of views. I ended up getting terminated because they said I can't publicly stand against the governor's policies and whatever, right? That's neither here nor there. But what I found is speaking up for what I believe to be true, living my truth, standing behind my moral convictions. Man, what it did is it set my life on this new trajectory where my gym grew by 600%. I started my podcast that is doing phenomenal. And I'm now living a life of passion, doing the things that I want to do. And both spiritually, financially, like everything's the best it's ever been. And I honestly think it's a result of standing up for my moral convictions, man.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, standing up for what you believe in is very, very important. And yet, we're trained to be submissive, I feel like. And we're not going to make this a political podcast because I want it to be more about the hunting. But, there's a lot of talk about public education and the school systems being very similar to the jail system, being
For sure.
being ran about by bells and schedules and standing in lines and waiting and all that process. So the point of
Well, let me say this real quick then. If you want to hear that side of me, check out my podcast, The Endless Endeavor, right? Because my podcast whole mission is to wake up a better version of yourself than you went to sleep, physically, emotionally, spiritually, learning how to build community, learning how to be self-reliant, learning how to be a protector, learning how to take care of your community. And the whole reason that podcast is doing well is exactly what you said. There is something going on in our society where they perpetuate being fat, sick, weak, obedient, compliant, all the things that Americans are not supposed to be. We're supposed to be defiant by nature. We're supposed to be strong. We're supposed to be resilient. We're supposed to stand up for our beliefs. That's how this country was literally formed, right?
Yeah.
And so, because a lot of people are feeling this right now, I think that's why my podcast is resonating with a lot of people, because that's what we talk about on a regular basis. So if you want to hear me go off on rants and really, really try and motivate people to become a better version of themselves, that's really what we built that platform around.
I love that. And it's a very powerful podcast. I've listened to it multiple times. I highly recommend it. And you know what the interesting thing is how, this podcast is focused around hunting and becoming a better human and all that. It goes hand in hand. It intertwines. It weaves
100%
so
it does.
well. The idea to be a provider is circled, encompassed around hunting. And here you are talking about, becoming a better person, your motto of microdosing adversity each and every day.
Yep.
That is hunting in a tiny little nutshell of like, why do people hunt? They don't just hunt for meat. They don't just hunt for the adventure. They don't just hunt for the spiritual side of it. So much of it is all wrapped into this challenge, this adversity of the hunt in order to become available and better for the next day and the next generation and for your family and your children and all that.
Well, and bro, that's exactly why I started getting into hunting. I mean, I'd been big game hunting probably 5 times in my whole life, right? And I'd never shot an animal. So I'd been skunked every single time. And through what we witnessed in 2020, where, and here's the thing, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't have my tinfoil hat on, but if people have their eyes open, they have to realize that the society that we all accept as normal life is held together by a thread. And we have some nefarious players at the top, and nothing is a guarantee and nothing is certain. So the world is volatile. I've lived all over the world in third world countries and war zones, and I have seen what human beings are capable of when things aren't ideal. The possibility of things becoming non-ideal here in America exists, right? And if people say that it can't, they're telling themselves a lie. So part of becoming a provider and being self-sufficient, I need to butcher an animal and really, as a provider, bring my family the type of sustenance that they need to survive. And that's kind of what motivated me to look into this and pursue this journey. Now, and this is what I tell everybody. If the world stays on a decent trajectory and you never need that skill set for survival, so be it, right? That's okay. But if you ever do need it and you don't have it, man, that's a bad spot to find yourself in.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Okay, so you being a former military guy and seeing combat and experiencing all that, I heard, and this may sound kind of cruel for some people who could listen to this podcast and be like, how could you say something like that? But I asked a former military guy, I think he was a Navy SEAL, one time if he'd ever be interested in hunting. And he was like, well, I don't ever really find the excitement in hunting animals once you hunt human beings. And I mean, what is being a veteran, being someone who, PTSD is so huge in the military and former military, do you see any type of resonance with that? Like is it challenging?
No.
No.
The answer is no. That sounds like some tough guy talk, some bullshit. Here's the deal about hunting human beings, right? When we hunted human beings, I was in Ramadi, Iraq, 04, 05. Lots of engagements, lots of combat. But we had an enemy at the time, right, when I was 24, 25 years old, that I held deep, deep hatred and resentment for. The way that Al Qaeda Iraq is the Islamic State and all of those people, the way they lived, their ideology, like I couldn't wait to find a bad guy to shoot. And when we'd get in engagements, man, if you'd kill a bad guy, it'd be like hugs and high fives. It would be exciting. And I wouldn't lose a wink of sleep over it. Like, and that's again, that's not tough guy talk. We are on the field of battle and we are facing our enemy. And a victory should feel good, right? It shouldn't feel bad. I'm here to tell you, I had 1,000 times more emotion when I put an arrow through a buck than I ever did killing a man. Because that buck doesn't hold evil inside of it. That buck is not my adversary. That buck is just this majestic creature out living its life that I took from him to provide for my family. To me, it was 1,000,000 times heavier. 1,000,000 times heavier. And here's the other side of it too. I was doing that at 25 years old. I didn't have the emotional intelligence that I have now. I don't have the understanding of self that I have now. I know when I look back at the things that I did and I saw in Iraq, I'm not proud of a lot of it. I was cold. I had my emotions shut off. And I also think that was necessary for what we were doing at the time. But I'm much more in tune with who I am as a man now. And I'm expressing emotions and I'm learning about the cycle of life. Who I am today was a very, very powerful experience. So, any veterans out there like, oh, killing a deer is nothing because I've killed men, shut the fuck up, man.
Mm.
That's
That's
my professional advice.
Dude, I mean, you're speaking directly to it, and it's very important. So one of the things that I've learned and I've gathered is that hunting is extremely healing. Nature is healing, right? And so there's scientific studies that show a hospital patient that has a window that looks out onto a parking lot or concrete jungle, and you take the exact same patient with the same ailment and all that, and one has a window that looks out into a park or a grassy area with trees. The patient that looks upon nature heals faster than the person that doesn't connect with nature. So you being a veteran and this whole PTSD and or just different things, like do you find yourself like in a sense of renewal or grounding with nature?
I think that part of being a human being is facing adversity, challenging your body, challenging your spirit, challenging yourself on every single level. And for me, I find that in one of two places. I find that out in the mountains, and I find that on my jujitsu mats. And anytime I'm feeling down, like yesterday was a prime example. Yesterday wasn't the best day of my life, and I'm not going to go into all the details, but I have the same story that everybody has. We have ebbs and flows, we have relationships, we have marriages, and we have ups and downs. And I can consistently know that when I'm currently in a down, if I go out on a hike or I go to my jiu-jitsu academy and I get some good training in, man, it renews my spirit. And that's just something that is inherently being a human being. We're not meant to just sit around and stare at flat screens and type things on computers and just drive around in cars and be drones. That's not the human experience. But what we're finding is that's becoming the human experience in today's modern world. And bro, that's why the modern world is plagued with obesity, depression, suicide, all the negative aspects of humanity are starting to get exasperated because we're not taking time to connect with the earth, connect with ourselves, connect with our communities. And I think more and more people are starting to see this. And that's why there's a movement behind this stuff. I mean, bro, I don't know if you saw that video that I posted last week. Did you see getting in my ice bath?
Yep, I sure did.
Bro, 1.2 million views, thousands of comments, because I think people are starting to realize, man, part of growth, both physically and spiritually, is getting outside of your comfort zone. And I'm new to hunting, but I can tell you after 5 days in the woods in Reedstown, Wisconsin, you're outside of your comfort zone. You're hiking around, you're cold, you're sitting in a tree stand for, I mean, my first sit was 6 hours. And it was funny because the guy that owned the ranch, he goes, man, you climbed up there and I didn't hear from you for 6 hours and I had to come and get you. He goes, that's insane. Most people are good for 2 or 3 at the most. And I was like, bro, I'm going to sit in the stand until you tell me otherwise because this is your ranch and you're in charge. I would have sat for 12 hours, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, right. It's I've always been a Western hunter, and this idea of like backpacking hunting and going out into the mountains and all this has its, I call it primal adventure. And I've always wondered until I moved to Texas, like this idea of whitetail hunting and tree stands and blind stands. It, dude, sitting there and just waiting is a challenge in itself. Like, holy smokes, to just be patient. I can see why, zenning out and meditating is such a challenge and is good for the soul because holy smokes, that's difficult.
Well, bro, I can tell you this. This is my biggest takeaway from tree stand hunting. And it was my first time doing that. Um, every other time I've been out in the woods, be it military operations on patrol or hiking or climbing mountains, or even the few hunts that I did do, like you said, Western backpack hunting, right? When you're out in the woods and you're moving around and dude, nature, their senses are so much more acute than ours that the woods are not alive because they know you're there. Most of the animals are hiding from you. Most of the animals are not letting their presence be known just as a self-preservation mechanism, right? Dude, you climb up in a tree, you sit there for 20, 30 minutes and you're undetected, the woods come alive, man. And I'd never seen that aspect of the wilderness. And I was up there and I was watching coyotes do their thing. I was watching raccoons, gray squirrels, deer, and you're almost observing nature. from like a slightly detached position. And it was fascinating, man. Absolutely fascinating. One thing that I noticed, and I'd be interested to hear your perspective on this, it's almost like all the animals in the forest are on some type of cycle or some type of unwritten agreement where it will come alive in phases. And all of a sudden, you have all of these turkey and birds and squirrels and raccoons. Everything's out moving and being active, and then everything will die off at the same time, and it'll be dead silent for a period of time. Then the forest comes alive again. And man, over the course of the week out there, watching those cycles of the forest coming alive and then dying down again is fascinating because I'd never heard anybody speak of that or witness that myself.
Man, that's really cool. I think that speaks to the power of the ebbs and flows of nature, right? Uh, I
Yeah,
I would say 100% secular, and the cycles of, you can only ride a wave. We're talking about like vibrations and energy wavelengths and stuff like that. You can only ride such a high wave for so long, and then it needs to take a break, and then
exactly.
it comes right back up, and then it needs to take a break. And I feel like that is like the visual that I was getting when you were explaining that. I haven't personally experienced a sit where I am focused about the animals around me, such as like a tree stand. So usually when I'm hunting in the past, it's always like, all right, we're going to be glassing this hillside that's 800 yards away, or 1,000 yards away, and it's a little bit of a different dynamic because you don't get to experience that squirrel right next to you because you're not worried about being silent when you're glassing something really far away. So
Yeah.
when you're talking about like what is it? There's a Homer Simpson little cut from the TV show The Simpsons where he disappears into a bush. I don't know if you ever seen that. Like that's what I pictured when you were explaining that. You climb up in the tree and then you just like go right into
Yeah,
it
bro.
and be like, okay. Um, yeah, I think this world is truly spectacular, and until you take the time to stop and pause, we completely miss the grandeur of what this world truly is.
Well, and also we are supposed to, on a genetic level, like our DNA is supposed to be interacting with our environment and our world, not these concrete jungles that we're all caught up in these days.
Hmm.
And you know, I don't know if you've heard of the mouse utopia study. Have you ever heard of that study?
Oh, refresh me on it.
So the scientist he created this enclosure and he put, I forget the number of mice, but let's say 20 mice, right? But it was a huge enclosure and it was very comfortable and they had all the food they could need, the bedding, all the water that they could need. And it was a mouse utopia. And these things lived in peace and harmony and everything was good. Well, what do you think happened? They started having sex, they started having more and more babies. Those babies started having more and more babies and they didn't change any dynamics of the enclosure. They just let the population grow to see what would happen with the mice. And what they found is once they started living on top of each other, man, all kinds of crazy stuff started happening. They started to have hormonal imbalances. Um, there became tribes of mice that like banded together and stood against other tribes of mice. The alphas, the ones that start, the strongest ones, started to really take control, almost like a dictatorship of the environment. The weaker mice all became gay because if they went after females, the alphas would just like beat the shit out of them. And these alpha mice started leading or started like living with such aggressive energy that the female mice, their hormones went out of balance. They became sterile, and the entire population died off because they could no longer reproduce.
Wow.
They recreated this, bro. They recreated this study several times, and the same thing happened each time. And if people can't look at that and say, okay, there's something to draw from this because we are now in the phase of living on top of each other and it's going to be tough to be able to really experience the life that humans are designed to experience when we're not congruent with our environment anymore.
Right.
And I think that's a big problem we're facing in society.
There is so much to unpack from that study in regards to mankind, in regards to the whole hunting topic, and in regards to like the concept of atrophy, right? Or and hypertrophy.
Yep.
If you don't use it, you will lose it. Well, in order for us to use it, we need the space to use it. We need the environment to use it. We need to uh, just be in the right mindset. And man, I mean, there's so much, Greg, that we could go all over about and talk and still tie this into hunting because it's all connected, just like this, like what we talk about with this world and the root systems and nature. The point is we need to do something every day that scares us, that challenges our soul, that gets us out of our comfort zone. And it's too easy to live a life of pillows and luxury and softness. And it's time to get hard and get uncomfortable. And hunting does that for a lot of people who cannot find that in other aspects. Let's talk about your journey of you saying you arrowed this buck and the heaviness that came along with that. So earlier you mentioned about the adversary of being in Iraq and Afghanistan and you being like, this is my enemy versus this is just a living soul and it's just doing its thing and I'm taking its life.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you can see how the anti-hunters could speak to that, or do you feel like you have to go through the experience and then you're like, oh, it comes alive and now I see the importance and I eat meat?
I mean, I would say this to say that you're anti-hunting would just say that you're out of touch with reality. You're out of touch with the human experience. You look at any of our ancestors, any of the hunter, any tribal cultures today, they all eat meat. That's part of being human. And here's the thing, you can call yourself a vegetarian, a carnivore, an omnivore. Life eats life to survive, period. It's non negotiable. That's what it is. And if you want to go down the rabbit holes of the intelligence of plants, the intelligence of mushrooms, like every single thing on this planet serves a purpose and has a role, and we're all intertwined together. And just like these animals give their lives for us, one day we're going to meet the life cycle and we're going to give back to the earth and we're going to become dirt. Like that's how it all works, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for people, and like I said earlier, when you just watch nature happen, dude, nature doesn't have like opinions or nature doesn't have like these expectations. Nature is just doing what nature does. And when you interject yourself into that, there is a primal feeling that just feels right. And I think a lot of people have never experienced that. They've never touched that. And that's an important part, I think, of understanding our role in just the existence of the planet. And, like the reality is we're very small. And in order to really find that inner peace and understand who you are, I think you need to realize, man, I'm just a small little piece of the puzzle, but I'm going to go out there and I'm going to experience it to the fullest. And that's what hunting has done for me. I went out there and I got to understand the life cycle a little more intimately. And I got to understand what it's like to be someone that can harvest their own animals and experience the whole life cycle. And I'm the first to admit it, man. It didn't feel good at first. There was heaviness. There was sadness attached to it while simultaneously feeling the highest level of excitement that you can feel. And those are kind of conflicting emotions to feel at the same time. But man, that's what living is, you know? You have to have ups and downs. You can't have hot without cold. And to go out there and feel those spikes of intense emotions and then understand that you're putting yourself in the life cycle, I think that that touches people in a way that if you haven't experienced it, you can't really understand. I think it's important for people, even if you're not a hunter, if you're not a fisherman, if you eat meat and you believe in protein sources as a source of nutrients, maybe you should feel that. Maybe you should go do that, even if it's one time, just to understand like, dude, your meat didn't come from Safeway. Your meat didn't come in a little styrofoam package. Your meat came from an entity, from a being. And somebody had to take that thing's life for your life to sustain. And if people don't think that's an important life cycle to understand, I kind of think you're telling yourself a lie. You're kind of out of touch with reality.
Man, you're so spot on all this, and I love your perspective of being so new to it as well, right? Because it's fresh. It's
Yeah.
so often we rely on, well, this is the way we've always done it, and so that's the way I'm going to do it, rather than being like, no, this happened to me recently, and I can speak directly to it. I had a guest on a podcast recently that I released an episode, and he talked about, well, my mom always cut off the top of the ham, Thanksgiving ham or Thanksgiving Christmas ham, before she put it in the oven. And I asked her one time, "Why do you do that?" And she was like, "I don't know. I do it because my mom did it." And then she went to her mom, her mom, and was like, "Hey, why do you cut the top off of your ham before you put it in the oven?" She goes, "That's a great question. I don't know. I just did it because my mom did it." And it ended up being the
Yeah.
whole point of the story was like, well, it's because the oven was too small and I had to fit the ham in there, so I just cut the top off, rather than
Dang.
actually understanding why we go through these processes, because that is so powerful. And if we inwardly reflect, it leads to outward correction, and it allows us to live the best life possible. The best life
Bro, and
possible.
the whys are important. As an instructor, as a coach, I teach firearms, I teach jujitsu. The whys are important. If in those realms, as a professor, as an instructor, if I were to ever say it's because we always do it, you lose credibility, right? Because the whys are where you find the nuances. The whys are where you can really start to hone the little tiny details of your skill sets. And so it's healthy to examine the whys. And if anyone thinks otherwise, it's because it's their own ego, right? If you're at any type of course or you're in a class, any type of learning environment, and you raise your hand and you say, well, why is this? And I'm not saying in a manner of challenging, but just as a manner of having a better understanding. If the whys aren't welcomed, you have to ask yourself, you're probably not in the best environment that's conducive to learning. And
Yeah.
you know that as an educator,
Dude, I know that as a parent, because and you got young kids yourself. Like, how many times have your kids been like, "Why, Daddy? Why, Dad?"
Yeah.
And you'd be like,
Yep.
just because I said so," rather than being like, "Oh, well, actually, let me break this down for you." We're in such a hurry all the time to get to that end destination, and yet we need to remember it is about the journey, and that's the whole point of hunting. Is if we're too fast, if we just want to kill, or we just want that meat, and we're forgetting about everything else that comes along with it, then we are missing out, and we're not allowing room for growth, because growth comes through answering the why and figuring it out, and talking about that.
Of course, man. And so I really want to unpack this hunt for you because it was it was fascinating how it played out. I don't know. Did you listen to my episode on it by chance?
Nope, I didn't want to spoil this recording, so everything is
Okay.
brand new and fresh.
So if you're ready, let's go right into it, man.
Let's
I
do it.
want to. So we were in Reedstown, Wisconsin, and like I said, we are on my buddy's land. It's 80-acre plot, right? On this 80 acres, he has 12 tree stands set up in very just strategic locations, at the bottom of draws and on top of ridge lines and all these different places where he's owned this property for 22 years, where he has observed animal movement, right? So for the first few days, he would walk me to a stand and say, "Hey, this is a good stand that you should sit in today," and kind of give me the layout of the land and what I can expect, and just kind of teaching me the ways, right?
Hmm.
We saw some deer on the first day. I couldn't get a shot at anything. Nothing was close enough. My boy Zach he shot at a doe and she ducked the arrow, about a 25-yard shot. And I mean, he was super bummed, but like my buddy Chad said, who owns the ranch, he's like, there's so much learning. Every time you send an arrow at an animal, regardless if you hit or you don't hit, or even if it's a bad hit, which nobody wants a bad hit, right? He goes, but every archer's had bad hits, and there's tons of lessons to draw from that, right? And so we didn't have any success. And here we are, 4 days hunting. We flew across the country. We invested our time. We invested our money. And we're coming up on the last hunt of the trip. It is now Sunday night, and the Sunday night evening hunt is our last hunt. And we are flying back to Seattle Monday morning, right? And I just said, you know what? I'm going to go sit in the stand where I saw the most activity. I don't know why, but for me, that's what makes sense. Because he goes, on the last hunt, I want both you and Zach to choose your own locations. You've hunted here for 4 days. You understand the layout of the land. Now for the last hunt, you pick your spots that you're most comfortable with. So I went up to the top of this ridge line on the far side of this 80-acre plot of land to this stand that he calls the food plot stand. And it was about 3 o'clock. And I said, you know what? I'm going to get out there a little early, and I want to be in position, and I want to just really give the woods time to, to die back down from me climbing up the tree and hiking in and all of the stuff that does disturb just the natural flow of things. At about 3:30, because I wasn't expecting anything until, a little later in the evening. At 3:30, I get a text message from my wife and Zach's mom. We have a group thread between us. And it was Zach's mom, and she goes, I'm sending a prayer for you guys. You're going to have success tonight. And I was like, okay, cool, right? Right after that, another text comes through, and it was my wife. And she goes, I'm manifesting an 8-point for you. And I was like, okay, right? Bro, this is no bullshit. 30 seconds after that text came through, an 8-point walks out onto the food plot. I hadn't seen an 8-point. It actually ended up being a 9-point because one of the tines, is that what it's called? The tines?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. It was, the front tine was split, and it was over an inch on the split. So my buddy's like, that counts as a 9-point. Walks out onto this food plot, and the wind is just ripping. Like, I'm up on a ridge line, and that's not ideal, I know, for archery hunting, right?
Right.
And bro, it's like super loud. I didn't have my rangefinder out yet, my Vortex laser rangefinder. It was at the bottom
Shout
of
out
my
to Vortex right there.
bro, it's their Bino, their Viper, or their Razor HD Bino with laser rangefinder incorporated. That thing is sick. I didn't have it out yet because, like I said, I was just getting set in, right? And it was in the bottom of my backpack. So I was like, dude, if I dig around in my backpack to get that thing out, it's going to hear me and it's going to spook.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to just estimate the range as best I can. And I thought it was about 40 yards. And I was like, I'm just going to send it, dude. This is the last hunt of the day. He's broadside. It's 40 yards. I know the wind is ripping, but I'm going for it. Dude, I send an arrow and I miss.
Oh.
Now I'm here to tell you that I don't know if buck fever is why I missed. I don't know if the winds is why I missed. And or maybe a combination of the two. But the truth is, I'm very good with my bow. But being very good on a flat range versus shooting at an animal in high winds, those are two very, very different experiences.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I will say is I didn't practice shooting from elevation, and shooting from tree stands is also a very different experience. And so I'm going to incorporate that in my training in the future. But I send the arrow and the deer bounds. It looks like it takes off, right? But what I realized is that the winds were so loud, it didn't even hear the bow. It must have just heard the arrow whiz by and jump a few bounds away, right? Because the direction that it jumped, I could no longer see it from the tree stand. So I was like, fuck, missed it, right? I end up climbing down the tree stand. I'm like, I missed. I'm going to go recover my arrow. As I'm walking up, the terrain kind of dips down a little bit because we're at the top of this ridge line. And as I get closer, I see him still sitting right there.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, shit. And so, dude, knock another arrow. And now I'm at about 20 yards. Thump, and put it through him. This time he jumps about 5 feet in the air and takes off.
Wow.
And I was like, oh shit. All of these crazy emotions, right? I'm like, dude, it finally happened. It finally happened. I did it. I did it. At the same time, like I said earlier, man, there was kind of a heaviness to it. There's kind of a sadness to it because it's like, all right, I did it, but I'm killing this creature. And bro, like, and people can say whatever they want. I've killed human beings before in combat. I don't enjoy killing anymore. That's the truth. I've grown past that. I don't find pleasure in taking a life. And it was heavy for me, man. And that's just my experience and that's my perspective. But I also think that's probably good, right? Like if you're going to take this animal's life, there should be a certain amount of heaviness attached to that. And so he's gone and I can't see him. And I find a blood trail, but it's very minimal. And I call the owner of the ranch. I was like, dude, I just put an arrow through a buck, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, just relax. Okay. Sit down. We're going to wait. He goes, you don't want to chase an animal right away. He goes, my rule of thumb is we give it about 30 minutes. And he goes, even more sometimes, just depending on like how much blood is at the impact site. And then we'll start our track. He comes up there, we start our track, and we lose the blood trail.
Oh,
bro. Again, this emotional roller coaster, right? Put an arrow through an animal. I got blood. We're tracking. Now the blood's gone. And so now I'm starting to feel like, well, am I going to wound an animal and it's just going to crawl into some thicket and die? And just that's not the experience that I'm here for. Now that's an experience that every hunter goes through at some point. And that's what my buddy Chad reassured me of. He's like, Greg, I can see how emotional you are right now. You need to know that if we don't recover this animal, every archer has went through this, and it's okay. And it's not ideal. It's actually kind of unfortunate, but you're going to learn a lot, and you're going to understand this is part of hunting. So don't let it get you too down. He goes, I understand that it doesn't feel good, but just know this is part of what we do as hunters.
yeah.
So
It's something that we sign up for, but you never think about, right? It's
yes,
oh,
yeah. So then Chad says to me, he goes, when I track animals, I kind of have a 3-tiered approach. He goes, physical evidence takes priority overall. If I have blood trail, if I have prints, if I have disturbances on the earth, that takes precedence. If I lose those things, I go into animal behavior. He goes, I've been hunting since I was 13. I understand what animals typically do, what they don't do. And he goes, one thing that an injured animal never goes uphill. Not in my experience. He goes, injured animals want to take the easiest path to flee. And he goes, so if you look at the terrain here, see how from the ridgeline that we're at, it kind of forms a draw. And then this draw circles around and goes out towards a cornfield. He goes, I would be willing to bet that the animal followed that draw down and is probably trying to bed down in the cornfield. And we don't have any evidence contradicting that, and we have to go with something. And he goes, and my last thing that I use when I'm tracking an animal is my intuition. If something feels right, I'm going to listen to it. If something feels wrong, I'm going to listen to it. And he goes, and I believe that the animal probably followed this draw. And I'm like, okay, cool, right? Well, right as we're coming to this conclusion, we get a text message from Zach. He is 30 acres, or I mean, he is on the other side of an 80-acre plot of land. And he goes, I just put an arrow through a buck out of my stand too. And we're like, oh shit.
wow.
Now we have 2 animals to track. We've already lost one. We haven't had any luck all week. And now all of a sudden we have 2 bucks that we're going to be tracking. And Zach goes, he's the biggest buck I've seen on this whole trip, but he was acting real funny before I put an arrow through him. And Chad looks up at me and goes, bro, look at where this draw goes and look at where Zach was positioned. That's your buck.
Wow.
And I was like, whoa, you're right. That was my buck. So, dude, we hustled down the ridgeline or down the draw to where Zach was at. And now from Zach's position, we found a good blood trail, a really good blood trail. And we ended up, and this was my first time tracking an animal, and Chad just let me and Zach do the track. He just stood back, and bro, everything was like magical. It was literally dark out now. We were under headlamps tracking. A massive storm is on the horizon with lightning and thunder, and it's pouring rain, not on top of us, but we could see the rain coming, right? And I didn't even think about it at the time. Chad brought it up to me after the fact. He goes, I didn't want to rush you on your track, but the rains were coming. And as soon as the rains hit, tracking an animal is almost impossible. Mm. And, bro, we tracked for about an hour and found this buck out in the cornfield, exactly where he said it would probably end up, with 2 arrows through it.
Wow.
Bro. And here's the crazy thing. Zach is not my biological son, but he is a son to me. Him and I have been on, like I told you earlier, we've been on a handful of hunts and we've had no success. This was our first time harvesting an animal, and we did it together with the last light. As soon as the track was done, the rains hit and it was just a downpour. And we're out in this cornfield with lightning and thunder, drenched. And it was like, whoa, we did it, man.
Powerful. That's a powerful story.
Man, I think about how that played out. If I hadn't chose my stand, it wouldn't have worked. If he hadn't chose his specific stand, it wouldn't have worked. When I put that first arrow through the deer, it could have ran in any single direction, and it ended up going directly to Zach, where he finished it off. Man, you couldn't, and that's what my buddy said. He goes, I've been an archer since I was 13 years old. And he's like, I think he's 48 now. And he's like, I've never heard of something like this. This is the craziest hunt I've ever been on.
Wow.
And yeah, man, like, how does something like that even happen outside of maybe just, dude, I don't know, meant to be, manifested? I'm starting to become a big believer that we have the power to manifest our reality. And
I'm a big believer, and I've spoken on this podcast multiple times, that we're made in the image of God, and God's the creator. And if we're made in his image, then we also are made to be co-creators with him. And when it comes to manifesting, is, God said, let there be light, and there was light. So it's time to speak the power in which we hold over our lives and stop speaking death. It says in the Bible, out of the mouth, the tongue holds the power of life and death. So it's like, what type of manifestation do you want to create in your own life? That is a powerful story. And I don't believe in coincidences. I truly believe this is meant to happen the way it was exactly meant to happen. So that's huge. Question for you is, now that you've shot your first buck and Zach shot his first buck, who's keeping the skull?
So here's the interesting thing. The guy that owned the ranch, it was me, and Chad is his name, and me and Zach and Chad, and then his buddy, whose name is Steve. Steve was out hunting with us for the week. He's a professional taxidermist by trade, and he's one of the best. He's one of the best ones around, right? And he's mounting the buck for Zach.
Oh,
he's gonna do a nice shoulder mount. And so, bro, it's just crazy. The world has been the way that the world has been operating lately. Again, it's because I think we manifest our reality. I had a free hour or two before my flight in the morning, right? And Seamus Terry, the president of Vortex, he texts me and he goes, "Do you have time for coffee before you fly out?" And I was like, "Fuck yes, we do." So I drove to Vortex. Me and Zach had coffee with Seamus. We told him the story. They gave us a tour of the facility, and Seamus was like, "Hey, when that mount's done, let me know, and our shipping department will crate it up for you and send it out to Zach. We ship thousands of packages out a day. We're dialed in. We have the ability to do that. We'll take care of you." So Vortex is going to be sending the head to Zach when it's finished. And it's like, dude, everything just came together the way that if I could have written a fairy tale ending to this story, we both got to take part in killing our first buck together. It's just bizarre, man. But bizarre in the best way possible, I suppose.
Man, that's a powerful story. What's some of your biggest takeaways as far as uh, now killing an animal and partaking in that and I'm sure you guys, so it's whitetail in Wisconsin, so you put it in the back of a truck and then brought it back to a barn and skinned it and gutted it, or did you field
Yep,
dress
yep.
it right there?
No, well, we gutted it, and then we threw it in the back of an ATV and took it to the neighbor's barn where he has like a processing station set up. And man, I mean that process too. I've never skinned an animal. I'd never, I mean, I've never processed an animal and cut all the meat off and everything. And it was a big learning experience for me. And kind of to go back on what I touched on in the beginning of the show, that's part of the reason I'm doing this, right? The world that we live in right now, the world that we share with all of these other people that are not living a life that's congruent with ours. I just feel like there's potentially volatile times ahead. I'm not a conspiracy theorist or a doomsday prepper, and I'm not even saying that's going to happen, but I'm saying it's a possibility. And because it is a possibility, I felt I needed to learn how to do those things. Now, I'm by no means a fucking expert. I have a long ways to go. I skinned one animal, but now I have a baseline knowledge and a basic understanding of what that process looks like. And I think that's an important skill set for any human being to hold. And it was a good experience for us to share that together and learn. I would say the biggest takeaway, you asked what one of my takeaways is: patience, man.
Mm,
Like
it's a
we
virtue.
live Yeah, bro, we live in a society where instant gratification is available for almost everything in our life. I mean, dude, do you remember when we were kids? If a catalog showed up in the mail and you saw a toy out of the back of it that you wanted, you'd have to clip that back page, you'd have to write down the item number, mail a check in, and 3 months later, your toy might show up.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Now, now it's Amazon Prime, and if it can't get there by 10 p.m. today, people are like, "Bitch, we got a problem." Like, man, this item doesn't have same day delivery. I have to wait for the next day, and that's what life is becoming on so many different aspects. And bro, I'm as guilty of it as anybody because life is becoming convenient, and things are at our fingertips for almost everything. And when you go out there and you experience that, it's the exact opposite.
Right.
You are here to take this experience with whatever nature gives you. And 4 days in a tree stand might not sound like a long time, but 4 days without slinging one arrow, it kind of felt like an eternity. Now, I'm not saying it eternity in a bad way because I enjoyed my time out there. I enjoyed the experience. I enjoyed how it made me feel interacting with nature. But at the same time, you are learning to be patient because you realize, man, I can affect the hunt to a certain degree based on how I'm conducting myself and my behaviors. But the other side of it is, the universe just has to be willing to provide to you. And if you just simply have to be at the right place at the right time. And if you are, you're going to have success. And if you aren't, you're going to get skunked again. And I think for me, it was healthy to actually come to terms. I was starting to come to terms that, you know what, this whole week is not going to produce, but I have to understand that I took other things away from this as opposed to taking an animal. I got to take a lot of growth, a lot of experience, and I was kind of coming to terms with that in my own mind. And then, boom, right at the end, it produced, man.
Yeah. So powerful. I went to an emotional intelligence leadership training a couple years ago. I flew down to San Diego multiple times, and one of the big takeaways that I had from that training is that they would say and they'd speak it um, is the universe is rigged in my favor. The universe is rigged in my favor. rather than the woe is me or here we go again, it's not going to work out or all this stuff. It's like, no, the universe is rigged in my favor. Whether or not what I want might be fulfilled in this moment or it might not, there is something to always take away from it and for us to understand the why. Why did this happen? Why did this happen? And the universe will provide. It's just like you
100%, bro.
said, you just got to be patient.
Well, and here's the thing: the universe is rigged in your favor if you believe it is. Right?
Right. Right.
The universe is your biggest adversary if you believe it is. And if you are like Cam Haynes always says, must be nice. The must be nice guys, right?
Yep.
If you're a must be nice guy, the universe is going to give you must be nice energy. And bro, I know this sounds crazy, but over the last 24 months after being terminated, and now I'm standing on my own 2 feet. I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a businessman. I'm dealing, I grew a massive social media presence, so I'm dealing with like sponsorships and all these things that are new to me, right? So I've been reading all of these books from guys like Ed Milet, Andy Frisella, and guys that I'm actually becoming personal friends with too, which is bizarre. They all say the same thing, like manifest your reality. If you believe you can achieve all these things that seem kind of like new age woo woo bullshit, bro, every person in life that is winning has learned that lesson and come to that understanding and navigates their life accordingly. And I think there's a lot to it, man. I think we all hold the power to be able to achieve greatness. And the only way that you can do that is if you exercise the mindset of abundance, the mindset of winning, the mindset of growth. And if you do those things, man, you can just keep ascending and ascending and ascending. We are responsible for holding ourselves back. And I'll take it a step further. I think society is responsible for holding us back. And I actually think society wants to hold us back because, man, think if every single individual was a fit, powerful, intelligent, spiritually strong person capable of anything, achieving anything they wanted. I don't think the powers to be want each and every one of us to hold those powers. So they try and keep us down, man. They try and beat us down. They try and keep us fat and sick and unmotivated. But all that's bullshit. When you peel back the curtain and you see what's on the other side of it, each and every one of us holds the power for greatness. And here's the most interesting part about it: there's no shortage of room at the top. Every single one of us can be at the top together. And if people say otherwise, what they're doing is they're telling themselves a lie just to keep themselves in that low vibration, in that low position. And man, the more I understand this, the more I realize the future is limitless.
Yeah.
It's limitless, man.
Yeah.
Bro, my podcast made more money last year than I used to make as a deputy. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, what? Who? No one ever thinks, you know what, I can quit this profession where I was working 5 10s as a deputy. It was grinding my soul to dust. I never thought that, oh, I could actually change the trajectory of my life dramatically and do a 3-hour episode a week and make comparable money. People hear those stories and they think it's crazy. And I get people telling me all the time, well, I don't have the ability to do a podcast or I can't teach jujitsu. You're right. Maybe your skill sets are not my skill sets. But if you're telling yourself that you have nothing that you can build and grow and develop, man, you're the one that's shackling yourself. You're the one that's keeping yourself down. Every single one of us holds that power, man. And I know I'm kind of ranting, but I'm fucking passionate about it because I know it to be true because I've felt it and observed it in my own life over the last 24 months.
I love it. You ever heard the saying "trust the process"?
Of course.
What do you
Yeah.
What do you think of that saying?
Well, I mean, trust the process if you're putting in the right energy, right? Also, I guess trust the process if you're putting in the wrong energy. Because if you're putting in the wrong energy, the process is not going to give what you would like to get out of it. You know what I'm saying?
Right. It works both directions.
Yeah.
Oh
Bro,
man.
this manifestation that I've learned about over the last 24 months. And dude, I'm meditating and I'm also starting to experiment with plant medicines. I'm going on an ayahuasca retreat in the jungle soon to like try and learn about myself. Like all of these things that I'm trying to learn about, they work the other way too. If you tell yourself you're a shitty person, if you tell yourself you can't, if you tell yourself you're weak, if you say, oh, you know what? You look at that guy with the nice car and the nice house and the beautiful woman, and you say, I wonder why he has that and I don't. Well, that's why he has that and you don't. Because you are not putting in positive energy. You're not moving forward with love and abundance and desire and passion. And once you start to do those things, man, the world opens up to you. And it opens up to you in a way, bro, the world has opened up to me in a way where I almost feel like I'm in a simulation, like I'm in a movie, you know?
Like you're in the
Like,
Matrix.
bro, the president of Vortex Optics is a personal friend of mine now. Like Andy Frisella is a personal friend of mine. Like all of these people that hold these powerful positions throughout our society, through the power of the internet, we've been able to connect and build friendships. And dude, how many people talk shit about the internet all the time and talk about how terrible it is and how toxic it is? Bro, you find what you're looking for. Like you if it like what is how's the saying go? Your frequency is what you frequently see, right? So if you're looking for negativity, you get online, you're gonna find that. But dude, if you're looking for love and friendship and connection, I'm here to tell you all that is there too. And my life has changed dramatically from building relationships and building a circle of people that want to win, that want to be on the side of right.
Yeah.
And bro, that opportunity is out there for everybody, man.
You know, when people say, when you're focusing on the money, it's too easy to get down on yourself. But when you focus on the other things, it's just a natural byproduct of it. Um,
I think so. I
yeah,
think so.
question for you, because this is a powerful question, and I know you're friends with Dr. Sean Baker. He trains at your gym, and he's all about eating steak and having a great time. Did you get a chance to eat some of that deer that night that you killed it?
No.
Okay, have you
So
had a chance to eat it yet?
no. And
Oh,
let me tell you the downside of the story.
okay.
Okay. We string the animal up, we skin it, we start butchering it, and there's a huge like it looked like it got gored by another buck, right?
Yep.
And as we're skinning it, we hit this pus pocket. And I would say, I don't know, probably 20 ounces of pus came out of its hind quarter, right?
Uh-huh.
And it looked pretty infected. So we get it completely skinned, and my buddy looks at it and he goes, the coloration of this meat, he goes, I think that infection has actually went septic and has infiltrated all the other parts of this animal. He goes, I don't recommend eating this animal.
Oh, that's sad.
Oh, I know, right? And so here's what he did for me. He went out and he harvested a doe like a day or two later, and he packaged it all up and he shipped it out, and it should actually be arriving at our house in a day or two. But I actually think because of manifesting this is what I think happened. And I know that I'm crazy, but I think I needed the experience, but I hadn't quite earned it yet. Like nobody harvests an animal on their first archery hunt. You know what I mean? But because I was putting out the right vibrations and I was praying and I was believing, I think that a sick animal was presented to me that was going to lose its life anyways to simply fulfill the hunting aspect that me and Zach were looking for.
Yeah.
And
Fascinating.
yeah,
Fascinating.
right. I honestly think that's what took place.
Again, I will say this, when you get to eat the meat of the animal in which you take its life of, it is a very, very special thing. And you'll be like, man, this is the best steak I've ever had in my entire life.
Yeah, no, I don't doubt it, man. I think it's just like when you cook something yourself, it tastes a little better,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Because you went through the process of providing this meal for yourself. Where really hunting is that process, but it's exasperated. It's taking it a few steps further. You're not only preparing this meat, but you literally harvest it out of the fucking woods, and now it's on your table feeding your family. And I look forward to that, man. I want more of that in my life, and not only for the spiritual connection to the planet, but the more you look at the Western diet and processed foods, man, everything has preservatives, everything has seed oils in it. All the animals have antibiotics and hormones, and nothing's grass fed and grass finished anymore. We're making our animals extremely fat, so their actual meats are no longer like containing the same macronutrient splits that they should in nature. We're just fucking everything up, man. And humans are notorious for that. And I think getting back to really our roots is what's going to really provide like optimal health and fitness for our families.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. That's it's spot on. Spot on. Greg, brother, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story and your journey and your perspective and talking about your experiences in this world, because when we share our experiences, it allows room for people to reflect on their own and then challenge themselves to say, all right, what do I want? What am I going to go get? Am I going to make this reality the best it can possibly be, or am I going to be a victim in my circumstances in life? So I really appreciate it, brother.
Hell yeah, man. I appreciate you having me on. And undoubtedly, we'll do it again sometime.
100%. 100%. Thank you so much. All right, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in this episode. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up, share it, subscribe, and just thank you so much for tuning in to this episode, being a part of Soul Seekers Nation. You guys are incredible. Remember that hunting has the power to transform lives through primal adventure, and mentorship is conservation. You can never outgive good, people. What you put out in this world is naturally going to boomerang right back at you. I'm Johnny Mac. Be blessed, freedom on, and stay soulful. If you enjoyed today's podcast and want to support the show, you can always like, share, subscribe, and leave a rating, as it helps us share our mission of mentorship is conservation. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of Soul Seekers Nation as we transform lives through primal adventure. If you want to get more connected with the podcast, check out the Soul Seekers Nation Facebook group, as I look forward to connecting with you on the next episode. So stay tuned and stay soulful.